Welcome to the Friday Happy Hour with victory strategist, award-winning author and your happy hour host, Annmarie Kelly. Each week, Annmarie chats with women who have reinvented, started over or wrote fabulous next chapters. They share how they overcame their midlife challenges and how you can too. So kick back with some good happy hour something to drink and enjoy today's show.
All of my friends tell me that I'm the good girl, yes they do. They all see me as being so perfect, little Miss Goody Two Shoes. If I do something a little risque, they all gasp and I just say, good girls wanna get crazy sometimes too.
Hi and welcome. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour with me, Annmarie Kelly, and I'm that recovering good girl and your victorious woman empowerment partner. And this is where us victory chicks and you guys who love us meet on Fridays to chat about things we can do to make our lives better and more fulfilling and give us a little more jazz and sparkle. So thanks for coming to Happy Hour today. This week I invited a woman to talk about a subject most women don't want to think about, let alone discuss, even with their doctors. It's menopause, and our guest is Irene Hogan. She's a pharmacist who reinvented herself as a menopause expert, and she's going to explain the hows and whys of starting her next chapter, and she has some really good information to share. If you're approaching menopause, and especially for you if you're past menopause. And while you might think this is just for us victory chicks, you guys, because you love us and because you live with us, you might find out stuff that can help you too. Not for you personally, but to help you deal with us. There's so much to talk about this week. First of all, I hope you all managed with this last nor'easter. I think we got about 6 or 8 inches of snow, and it wasn't as bad as some places got. Well, although my webmaster in northern New Jersey said the snow that they got was barely enough for her kids to have fun with, and just enough to make traveling more difficult. But I was glad we had a snow day on Wednesday. Not that it didn't work, and that's the curse of having a home office. But Joseph didn't. He got to hang out. Like nobody, he doesn't usually do massages on Wednesday to begin with, but everybody would have canceled anyway, because it was like everybody was saying, or the weather was saying, stay home, stay home. But then on Thursday, he only had 2 clients who canceled their massages, so he was happy. He got to hang out on Wednesday and then still have a full day of massages on Thursday. Now, how about that whack job bomber in Austin, Texas? Yeah. My friend Kate lives just outside of Austin, and she's a school librarian there, and her son lives in San Antonio, which was the other city that was targeted. Well, Kate and her spouse are downsizing, so they're leaving Round Rock, the town where the bomber killed himself, and they've been looking for a condo right in the city of Austin, right in the city limits. Well, after the first bombing, and knowing she was house hunting in Austin, I was texting her, and I was worried for her, but she seemed unconcerned. But then when the second and the third bombings happened, that was a different story. Well, the first one I think they thought was racially motivated, and they weren't anywhere near where she was looking. But by the third bombing, it was a different story, and they were scared, and they were being told to stay home. So when it was over, while law enforcement was still searching the area, she texted me to say that she had to drive through the section where the bomber blew himself up, and, where they were looking for all, they were checking to make sure there was nothing else around. She said her 18-mile route to work, which is usually a 30-minute ride, took her 2 hours. I just wouldn't, I would have had to pull off. I wouldn't have been able to last that long. I would have had to go someplace to go to the bathroom. But 2 hours is, for 18 miles, that's a long day, long morning. Well, apparently that crazy guy felt no remorse, and he was doing just what he wanted. And I guess, I don't know, was he trying to put some excitement in his waste of a life? His video said he only regretted that he gave himself away in one of the videos when he was going into the FedEx place. I guess he wanted to keep killing and maiming people. What goes through people's heads like that? I can't help but wonder what his upbringing must have been like. Was he spoiled and never had to work or anything? That, was there nothing that gave him a sense of satisfaction or that he was proud about? Nothing good? Or was he just a bad seed? I mean, I'll bet every one of us knows a family, and maybe yours, and definitely mine, where the kids grow up to be stand-up people. They have the same parents. They grow up to be stand-up people, except for that one kid. That always fascinates me because that kid had the same parents as the other kids, but then something was different. So is it nature, or I always go back and forth with that nature versus nurture stuff. Well, I guess we'll never know what it was. We'll only know that we don't feel safe anymore. And how different an experience there from those kids on Villanova's basketball team. Those guys are playing their hearts out. And they had to get up to Boston the other night in all that snow. Well, I had so much fun during last year's playoffs, and I spent a lot of time and a lot of money at the bars here in town getting into that competitive energy stuff with kids from Westchester. And what about that Sister Jean? Do you know about her? She's the Catholic nun and an avid basketball fan who plays for the Loyola men's team. She was on, I think it was GMA this week, and said she prays for Loyola. But she also pays for the opposing team, too. Just not as hard. Robin Roberts was hysterical in Good Morning America. Well, but it's working because Loyola is now in the Elite Eight. Okay, and I hope there's some nun praying for the Villanova guys. Their Sweet 16 is tonight. Their Sweet 16 game is tonight, and it's against West Virginia. But I didn't go to our in-town bars last week on St. Patrick's Day because it was crazy in here. I spent most of it at home trying to ward off a cold and catch up on my energy from a busy couple weeks. But around dinner time, Joseph said he wanted some Irish food and drink. And the bars in town were packed with college kids. So we went to the Blarney Stone on Westchester Pike. I don't know if you've ever been there, but I like that place. And they had a cover charge for people at the bar, which was probably good because it kept out a lot of the drunks. So we sat at the restaurant section, and they had a vodka drink that they called an Irish Rose. I looked that recipe up, and it seems none of the Irish Rose drinks that I found online are made with vodka, and this was not made with whiskey, it was made with vodka. So I don't even know what it actually was, because every Irish Rose drink had Irish whiskey in it. Doesn't matter. It was good, and I had 2 of them, and some great fish and chips. So if you've never been there, it's worth giving it a shot. It's different. It's a small bar, has a small restaurant. And listen, that Sister Jean, she wasn't the only old folk who was getting attention in sports this week. Did you see those 2 centenarians? Do you know who I mean? The woman is 102-year-old Julia Hurricane Hawkins. And last weekend, she set a world record for the 60-meter dash in her age group. The age group was the women's 100-plus age competition at the USA Track and Field Masters Indoor Championships. And then there was Orville Rogers, 100 years old. He set the record in the 60 for men in the 108-plus age group. If you missed it, I posted a link to the article on victoriouswoman.com. The article has the video of both races. But here's the best part. It's from the Washington Post. And I chose to post that particular one just because of the headline. Because the headline reads, "Watch 102 and 100-year-old runners set the world records, you lazy slugs." Yes, that was the headline. So Washington Post was calling all the rest of us lazy slugs. I guess they were talking to us younger folk, huh? I watched both races a couple times because I really do want some assurance that we can keep going strong past our 40s and 50s and 60s. And maybe running isn't your thing or mine, but it can be something that grabs our attention and our energy and keeps us excited. And it's important for us to find that. In fact, that's a little bit of what our guest Irene Hogan will be talking about with us today. She believes aging and menopause do not mean that your body has to fall apart or succumb to chronic disease. She also believes that you have a lot of control about how to prevent that falling apart stuff from happening. And she put a lot of that into her book, Hot Chicks, Hot Sex, How to Survive Menopause. So she's here, and we're going to be talking to her in just a couple minutes. So go get some good happy hour, something to drink. And you guys, you'll need a beer for this one, so go have one. And then come back so we can talk about menopause with me and Irene Hogan. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Remember when you wished you had more time for yourself? And now you have it, but you notice you're keeping busy with stuff, but that stuff isn't making you feel happy or filled up? And when you think about what would make you happy and filled up, you get stuck or feel overwhelmed. And then you go back to what's more familiar, more comfortable, even if it's not making you happy. Wouldn't you love to find a way to start making sense of that deep discontent you're feeling? Well, you're not alone. I'm Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. And I know there's a place for you, one that other women have found to be both inspirational and empowering. And it's the Victorious Woman Project. Go there now and get on my mailing list, where you'll be the first to know about my upcoming online workshops, teleseminars, and more. And while you're there, take a couple minutes to look over my blog. You can download some of the free stuff I have for you and let it get your creative juices going. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the Victorious Woman Project. And that's at www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and I'm here with Irene Hogan, and we're talking about Hot Chicks, Hot Sex, How to Survive Menopause. Welcome, Irene.
Well, hi, how are you?
I'm doing really well, thank you. You know, Irene, you and I spoke earlier this week about how much women dread the idea of menopause, and even worse, what happens after menopause. And in your book, which, by the way, I have to tell you, I really liked it for being both easy to read and chock full of good information. So you say, and I'm quoting you, the value of women after menopause is not appreciated in Western cultures. And then you ask, what if menopause was not viewed as a negative phase of our lives, but one of fulfillment, discovery, and empowerment? What if menopause was a positive time in our lives? So, Irene, I'm asking you, the expert, what if it was?
And so it should be. I think there's so much doom and gloom attached. There's so much myths. And the media sells into this too as well. Really, you know, menopause is just a part of the natural aging process for women. And yes, it comes along with symptoms and it comes along with changes in hormone levels. But if we're prepared for it, if we have the tools and resources and we're educated and we talk about it, which is one of my, peeves, is that we don't talk about it. Women are really unprepared for menopause, and there's so much conflicting and confusing information that they read. And as I say, they're told it's a normal part of aging, but it's not. Our bodies shouldn't break down. We can be healthy, we can be vital, and really menopause is about the change. And so many women, when they go through this, and if they're prepared for it, and if we control the symptoms, and we look at lifestyles and dietary changes, we can make changes and be vital. And as I say, many women, as you know, become entrepreneurs. They change their jobs, and they pursue passions that maybe they wanted to do all their life. I think basically menopause is like puberty, but you go into it with more wisdom. Does that make sense?
That's good. And so many of my guests do exactly that. They, for whatever reason, they're starting a second or a third career or having a reinvention, and that's kind of what you did too.
Absolutely. I've been a pharmacist all my life, and I've worked in community pharmacy, I've worked in hospital pharmacy, and I'd worked for an independent that was an entrepreneur and a visionary. And he ended up having 5 pharmacies in the local community of Hamilton where I live. And we grew a community where pharmacy was like what I was used to in England when I worked in pharmacies and when I lived above the chemist where my dad worked, was that it was a place where people went and they knew you by name, and you talked about their families, and you talked about what they needed and their ailments and everything else. And so we wanted to nurture that and make our pharmacies, the pharmacies where people came to talk to us and that we were knowledgeable. And we also did not dismiss things like natural medicines and supplements and herbs and vitamins. We were trained in that. We trained all our staff in that too as well. And during that, I was there nearly 12 years, I built a women's health consulting practice. So it went from part-time 1 day a week and then grew to 5 days a week where I was seeing women one-on-one. We were making menopause plans. So we were educating them. We put programs on to prevent osteoporosis. We affiliated with local gyms and that and put programs on for women. And women started exercising. Bone density went up. You know, some women did change their careers. I remember one woman that actually became a fitness instructor in her 70s because of the program we put on.
Wow.
And then we were bought out by a huge, pharmacy conglomerate. And it was a cookie-cutter approach. They didn't recognize the value of what I did and what our programs did. And I was made redundant. They basically came into my office one day, and my assistant, and told us that we no longer had jobs. We had no warning, nothing.
And did you get escorted out?
Yes, I'd been there. They had been there 2 years. They shut down. We had a radio program, too, as well, interesting, that was very, very popular. And so our women's health program just collapsed. And so we had all these women that, had relied upon us and that had appointments with us and that trusted us for their health, but didn't have anywhere to go. And I was left after 13 years as being a community pharmacist. What did I do? So I started this entrepreneurial journey on my own. So that's what I've been doing the past 5 years, building my business, building an online presence, because I realized I could serve more people and internationally and globally if I was online. I've developed programs, and now I've just published my first book. So that's my last 5 years as a solo entrepreneur.
Interesting. It's interesting. And you and I were talking about this the other day, and you said something to me that I thought was really true, that you said that medicine right now offers platitudes for women instead of solutions. But you have some solutions, and that's what I want to be getting to today. So before we do that, let's talk about some basic definitions. And this is for the Victory Chicks and you guys. So can you tell us what exactly is perimenopause, menopause, and post-menopause? And are the symptoms the same for each one?
Yes, I will do. And I'm glad you said the guys, too, because if the few guys that come to my presentations and workshops, if they come, they're there to support their partners. And the more they know and the more they understand, then it's more helpful for the woman, too, as well, going through it. So I really applaud men to take an interest in this and know what. And often men will come to me and say, can you do something for my partner because she's changed? I don't know this woman anymore. So let's say menopause. Menopause actually has gone before you even know it. It's a year after you've had your final period. So once you've gone a year without a period, that's defined as menopause. And after that, you have no more periods usually. You may have a little bit of breakthrough bleeding, but in general, that means that you're no longer fertile, you're no longer ovulating, and basically your eggs are done. Mm-hmm. And so you go through hormonal changes then, but perimenopause is what I find a lot of women don't know about. They don't know how it occurs, they don't know what's occurring, they don't know when, and they don't know how long it's going to last. Until they notice some changes in their body and they go, hey, what's up? Maybe it's by my hormones. And they do go to their physicians, and their physicians say, well, there are no solutions, or no, you're too young, or hormones are dangerous, or wait until you've gone a year without a period. But they don't talk to them what's going to happen in the changes. So perimenopause occurs about 2 to 10 years before menopause. So menopause on average occurs around 51, 52. So in your late 30s and then up until you're 50, your hormones are changing, and that's what's missed a lot of the time. And that, to me, is a preparatory stage when women can learn about it, can make lifestyle changes. And so your hormones are starting to change. And some of the symptoms are similar and some are different. So in perimenopause, there's two hormones that we talk about, estrogen and progesterone. And in fact, a lot of people think that estrogen starts to decline in perimenopause, but often it's actually 20 to 30% higher than it can be during your premenstrual days when you're actually, you're having a regular cycle. Because what it is, it's like a roller coaster. Some months you ovulate, some you don't. So some months your estrogen's high, some months your estrogen's low. And that can cause what's, hormonal imbalances like heavy bleeding, like fibroids, endometriosis, things like that can occur or get worse during perimenopause. And because you're not ovulating every month, you can still bleed because you still have sufficient estrogen. Your progesterone goes down. And progesterone controls mood. So many women will find they've either never had PMS before and they start having PMS symptoms. So they have premenstrual bloating, they have depression, anxiety, their body changes, they're bloated.
So Irene, let me stop you there. So progesterone controls mood, and what does the estrogen do?
Estrogen, they both, control our cycle. But estrogen's essential for memory. It's essential for preventing bone loss. It regulates our cycle. It's for memory. Both estrogen and progesterone are brain protective. In fact, progesterone is what's called neuroprotective. It helps us think. It helps our brain. But what's happening in perimenopause is it's fluctuating. You're on this roller coaster, and they're erratic. And as I say, from one month to the next, you don't know what's happening. So you may see in some months that you feel quite normal, and then other months it's like all hell's gone loose, right? You're on this roller coaster. As I say, estrogen can be high, then it can be low, but progesterone is going down. And so women may notice headaches. They may start to notice subtle changes in their periods. Like, 1 month it's not exactly 28 days, maybe it's 30 days. Maybe it's a shorter cycle. Maybe they start to miss a cycle. And then sleep, mood, energy, fatigue, all of those things I find women are complaining to me. In fact, when I was working behind the pharmacy counter, one of the chief symptoms when I was counseling women was they were coming and looking for over-the-counter remedies and using things like Gravel and Nitol and that for sleep. And when I started asking them some questions, it just clued in. They went, oh, yes, okay. They didn't realize that this was the start of perimenopause and that their hormones were starting to change. Now, in menopause, your hormones, that's when you stop having a menstrual cycle. So then your symptoms can become more severe. So if you're having some mild hot flashes and night sweats in perimenopause, now estrogen definitely starts to decline. And we also notice depression. We know that you can have a first occurrence of depression in menopause, and that depression can cause mood changes and anxiety. Many women say they end up in a merge having panic attacks. And they haven't realized that's their hormones. And they get told, yes, it's just a panic attack. And they say to me, why am I having panic attacks? Mm-hmm. I've never had a panic attack in my life before. And it's because of all these changes in our hormones, we don't realize when we're having a regular cycle that regular ebb and flow of our hormones actually balancing us. But in perimenopause, that's totally out of balance. And that's why we see all these changes and all these symptoms.
Well, Irene, one of the things that you say is for women to keep a diary of symptoms. So, what would a diary like that look? Do you do it every day? Do you do it once a week? What does a diary like that look like?
I'll have women do a menstrual diary, so I'll have them track what's happening to their periods. In fact, I saw a patient the other day. She's absolutely amazing. She has this, and you can get apps, okay? Different ones are available now on our phones and everything like that. But when she comes to see me, she tracks, breasts can get tender. That's another thing that can happen. She tracks her bloating. She tracks her pain because she noticed that her swelling and pain and arthritis symptoms get worse at certain times of the month because she's in perimenopause. There's certain times when her sleep is worse. The occurrence of headaches. So when you do that and you can look at it, you can actually see that, and you can see your changes in mood. You can see when you're more anxious. You can see those changes in sleep. One of the key things and functions I tell to women is that we need to get you sleeping again, because sleep is the basis of good health and so many other things too as well.
I know, Irene, but nobody gets enough sleep.
Well, I know, but we think it's not a priority. We put it on the back burner because we've got this to-do list, right? Mm. I call this I should do this, right? And women should stop shoulding on themselves.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we do too much, and there's 25% of women sleep less than 7 hours a night, which means every week they're, deficient in one whole night of sleep. Can you imagine what that does to you over the period of a year?
Actually, I can. Actually, I can, because I'm one of those people who doesn't get 7 hours of sleep a night.
And I could ask you why, but that might be a deeper story.
It's just what you're saying. I'm trying to get like 17,000 things done, and I'm working all day, and then after dinner I do a little bit of extra stuff, and, then and I'm not an early sleeper to begin with. So.
Yeah. And a lot of women aren't, but we put it off. And if we don't make sleep a priority, if we don't get off our electronics and our computers, if we don't have a sleep routine, if we don't get at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep, one, you don't repair overnight, okay? Then you don't produce growth hormone, which is essential for building muscle in women, which protects bones. It helps us with weight loss. If you don't sleep at night, you're going to wake up the next morning feeling tired. It's going to affect your memory. You can't concentrate. Your appetite, you're going to be wanting to eat all the time because you're feeling tired and you have no energy. And the hormones that control your appetite are actually out of whack because you don't get good sleep. And so it's the one thing that women can learn to do for good health and wellness and anti-aging is to sleep.
Interesting, and we can put the other stuff off for another time.
Yes, because what's going to happen if we don't do that?
Well, I want to talk about hormone replacement. We need to go for a break. So when we come back, let's talk a little bit more about that and the standard medical treatments for that we know as HRT.
Yes, we'll do.
So everybody stay close. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Hi, this is Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. I trust you're enjoying my conversation with this fabulous, victorious woman. If you're getting inspired with ideas and feeling empowered, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's more for you. Tips, downloads, resources at the Victorious Woman Project. Go to victoriouswoman.com and look around and get on my mailing list so you can be the first to know about the newest good things I have for you. That's www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and I'm here with Irene Hogan, and we're talking about menopause and hormone replacement. Irene, HRT, the hormone replacement therapy, has been a standard medical treatment. I used to work for a pharmaceutical company for a short time, and it was Wyeth Labs, and they produced Premarin. So I asked my Victory Chicks community what questions they had, and one of them said her mother and grandmother both developed breast cancer within months of starting HRT. And she didn't say which HRT, if it was Premarin or something else. But everybody gets really worried about that when they do HRT. Is breast cancer a common risk for, traditional HRT?
There's so many myths and so many different opinions, and the research has changed. So you're talking about Premarin, it may be considered a natural estrogen, but it's also produced from pregnant mare's urine, so may not be natural for women to take. It may be natural for horses.
Produced, I'm sorry, Irene, it's produced from what?
It's produced from pregnant mare's urine.
Mm-hmm.
So they have horses that are pregnant all the time, and they collect the urine because they produce a lot of urine, and from that we can get hormones because we all excrete hormones in our urine.
Mm.
So really this stems back, the different opinions, the myths, the fear of hormone replacement therapy, and it's unnecessary. And I'm a member of the North American Menopause Society, I'm accredited with them, have said that we've really done women a disservice. And the reason that happened is in 1999 there was a study called the Women's Health Initiative where they put women on two types of therapy. One was Premarin and one was Premarin and Provera. So they both would be considered oral estrogens and a synthetic progestogen. And what happened was the studies were stopped early in 2002 and 2004. And the reasons being that they considered there was more risks than benefits. So they saw increased risk in cardiovascular disease, increased risk in strokes, and increased risk in dementia. And so they stopped them early. But some of those studies have been continued. And interestingly enough, in the Premarin-only arm, and that is an oral estrogen, there actually was shown to be a decreased risk of breast cancer, and that didn't get out into the news. And since then, we've looked a lot. Now there are different types of estrogens. There are topical estrogens provided in creams, and there is a natural form of progesterone rather than synthetic Provera. And so in European studies where they didn't use as much Premarin and Provera, they have found that there is either a null effect on breast cancer or a decreased risk. And the overall opinion is that there may be a small risk with certain types of estrogens and, as I say, synthetic progesterones, but after 5 years, and it's very small. Although any risk, is, for a woman, obviously, of breast cancer is concerning. I think every woman has to look at her own individual risks. And it's interesting that 80% of women that get breast cancer have never been on hormone replacement therapy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so again, that doesn't get told. Genetics is 10 to 20%. Definitely if you have the BRCA gene, and we all have heard of that in the news, right, and that increases your risk. But in general, women are at a low risk of breast cancer. And to me, prevention is the key to that. So, exercising, keeping an ideal weight, there's definitely certain supplements, certain foods and that can help prevent breast cancer. And I think that's what we should be concentrating on more in educating women. And really, hormone replacement therapy is about quality of life. And because of that study, women came off their hormones in droves. But then we saw a rise in the prescribing of antidepressants. And although some women are depressed and may need antidepressants, we don't have long-term data on that. There are risks of that. Women gain weight. It decreases their sexual desire and libido. So there's issues with that too as well. And so we stopped prescribing hormone replacement therapy for women, and we now know that symptoms go on far longer than we originally thought. Women were told to suck it up and live with symptoms. We now know the symptoms last anywhere up to 10 years. I have women in their 70s and 80s that are still experiencing hot flashes, night sweats, they're not sleeping, and their memory. And if they try and come off hormones, they say, my life isn't worth living. And as I say, with the newer hormones, so we're using more of the creams and the gels, and we are using progesterone.
So, Irene,
what we found is that benefits definitely outweigh risks, and also in younger women, because the target population in that study, the Women's Health Initiative, was older women who were overweight. They weren't having symptoms, so it wasn't given to them for symptom control. It was just given them for the studies. And we don't start hormones in that age women. So we're looking at what's called like the estrogen window, window of opportunity. And in younger women, the current research, I just read research the other day, is showing that hormones can protect against dementia, can protect against osteoporosis, which we always knew. That was one of the benefits even in that study. So when women come off hormones, their bone density starts to decline. So I think we need to look at what hormones are we talking at, what age of woman is it suitable for them, and what's their history. And that's why the whole treatment of menopause and life after menopause needs to be individualized and personalized for each woman. And that's what I do when I work with women. So hormones shouldn't be feared. And as I say, in younger women, benefits outweigh risks. And in women that do get breast cancer when they're on hormones, it's normally early on, and it's probably because we're not sure, does estrogen actually cause cancer, or does it cause it to grow when you've already got it in the body? Because cancer is a slow-growing cell. It takes 5 to 10 years for breast cancer to appear. And because they're under medical intervention, maybe they're screened more often too as well.
Well, Irene,
so I think the risks of breast cancer are small. In some women, they're going to be zero. And eventually, at some point, we'll probably have testing to be able to decide which women can take hormones and which can't. But I really think women should not be fearful of that. There is a lot of benefits, and it's also about quality of life. And we're going to live a third of our life. So if hormones are going to make that life good, and we're going to be able to sleep, we're going to have energy, we're going to be able to exercise and do the things that we want to do, then hormones may be the right choice for that woman.
Irene, you do bioidentical supplements, and, a few years ago, Suzanne Summers was all over the talk shows promoting those. But there's, a lot of mixed thoughts about them. Are bioidentical hormones safer than synthetics?
And here's all the controversy and the myths. All bioidentical means is hormone replacement therapy. It just means it's the same hormones that our bodies produce, so they're bioidenticals. Hormones act like a lock and a key. So when they fit in the hormone receptor, they turn the lock. And bioidentical is the same hormone. So we produce estrogen. There's 3 different types of estrogen. There's estradiol, estrone, and estriol. Estrone is what we make more of when we're in menopause because we make it from our fat cells. because that's a little thing that our bodies tend to do as we go into menopause. It sees estrogen dropping, so it gives us more fat so we can make estrogen. And then we have progesterone and we have testosterone. Now, some of those bioidenticals don't have to be compounded. I am a compounding pharmacist. I've trained in that. I've been doing this for over 20 years. What it means is that for things like testosterone, so if a woman's low in testosterone and she needs it for, say, for orgasm, for sexual drive, for libido, there is not a commercial product by the pharmaceutical company, so that needs to be compounded. There still are some pharmaceutical prescription drugs, and all hormones, bioidentical or not, have to be prescribed by a physician. They have to have a prescription. So I think there's this, confusion about bioidenticals. There are, FDA approved and in Canada Health approved hormones that are considered bioidentical, both progesterone and estrogen. It's normally estradiol, and it's normally in the form of a patch or a cream or a gel. Now, if you need estriol, which is one of the estrogens that's available in Europe and very good for vaginal health and for urinary tract infections and incontinence, that, again, is not available commercially. So that's where your compounding pharmacist comes in. They can make things that are not available. They can make combinations of estrogens. They can also make ingredients that don't have additives in, maybe. Progesterone that's available orally that is bioidentical is in peanut oil. So if you've got a peanut allergy, you can't take that. So compounding pharmacist allows us to make those individualized, personalized, change the prescriptions, change the delivery. So maybe you want a drop, maybe you want a lozenge, maybe you need a vaginal insert or a vaginal cream that's not available commercially. So that's all that bioidentical means, is that it's the same as your body's been producing. And there is some evidence that it might be safer and have less risk of breast cancer than some of the things like Premarin and Provera that we were seeing. But I don't normally quote that. I say, let's go with the lowest dose. Let's go, what your body knows what to do with, which is bioidentical. That may be a commercial pharmaceutical product, or it may be something that's compounded. So that's all that bioidentical means. Suzanne Summers was just the messenger, because women, as I say, were not getting offered hormones. And so she interviewed, the top integrative functional leading anti-aging practitioners for their views on hormones and things to take. So she was basically a spokesperson for them.
Well, you know what? I want to ask you this question. The woman who asked the question about that was talking about her mother and her grandmother also said that she supplements her estrogen by eating things like yams and carrots. So we need to take a break, Irene, and when we come back, I want to start with things that we have naturally, like yams and carrots and things, and I want to know if that's really true. And then there's other kinds of supplements. So I want to talk about that when we come back. So everybody hang in there. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour.
Are you one of those women who lived the first part of your life as a really good girl? That is, you did all the right things and followed all the so-called rules for women? I was like that too. But have you noticed that once you passed 40, you have less patience for those rules? Maybe you even think that the rules really don't make sense for you anymore. Maybe they never did and you just didn't realize it. Do you want to go where other recovering good girls meet to inspire each other and support their new empowered selves? Then join me, Annmarie Kelly, and some very fabulous Victorious Women. We're on Facebook at the Victorious Woman Project. So go to facebook.com/Victorious Woman Project. I'll talk to you there.
Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly. I'm here with Irene Hogan. Irene, I have so many more questions, so we need to go fast. So I want to ask you, this yams and carrots things, are there foods that we can eat, like yams and carrots, that can help us with our hormonal balance?
Absolutely, and it sounds weird, but I had a woman that told me that she controlled her hot flashes by carrying chickpeas around in her pocket. And chickpeas are a member of foods that are called phytoestrogens, and all that means is plant estrogen. So a lot of us are familiar with soy and isoflavone, so she's right. And things like apples, things like carrots, things like lentils, sunflower seeds, and flax. I recommend that every woman takes 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed a day because it has lignans in, and lignans are part of phytoestrogens. They're much milder than our own body's estrogen. But it can help with symptoms. It can help with hot flashes. It can also reduce estrogen dominance, which some women may have heard of that are listening. So yes, you can control symptoms with foods. You can control symptoms with lifestyles. If you increase fiber, that also helps reduce our toxins in our diet, which is abundance nowadays. We know that toxins have a lot of effect on women's hormones and symptoms in that too as well. So yes, you can do it with herbs. You can do it with foods. And then some of those extracts of phytoestrogens are used as herbs and supplements. So there's people will have heard of things like Siberian rhubarb, things like ginseng, things like licorice. Those are phytoestrogenic herbs and plants that we do use in supplements and in combination to help treat hot flashes, to help treat mood swings. Things like black cohosh as well will help balance our hormones, our progesterone, and help with mood too as well. So yes, and soy helps with bone density and helps with the cholesterol too as well. So there's a lot of advantages to healthy foods. And pomegranate is another one that I love, and that's a phytoestrogenic food too.
Huh. And I'm so shocked about chickpeas because I eat those. I bake them and eat them, like as a like a nut.
That's a great way to do them, and you can do that with soybeans too as well, and edamame too as well. So adding those to your diet. That's right. Soy, there's a lot of controversy about, but you want fermented, you want non-GMO, and in small quantities, it has been found to be effective in preventing breast cancer. And as I say, it just balances that estrogen. Where estrogen is high, it will block it, and where it's low, it will add on and relieve symptoms.
Now, Irene, there's a couple other things that you have in Hot Chicks, Hot Sex, and one of them is, and they're things I've heard about, but I don't know anything about them, DHEA and 7-keto-DHEA and 5-HTP.
Okay, so DHEA is another one of our hormones. It's produced by the adrenals mainly, and what the adrenals do, just as, to shorten it for time's sake, is they catch up with hormone production as our ovaries shut down. So DHEA is from the adrenals. The more stressed we are, the less likely our hormones are likely to be balanced. And DHEA can get converted into testosterone and estrogen. So it can be used as a supplement. I know it's available over the counter in the States. It's only available on prescription here in Canada. But that sometimes can be helpful for adrenal fatigue. It can be helpful for energy, and it does balance hormones. 7-keto-DHEA is a derivative of DHEA. It's mainly used for fat loss, so it helps with metabolism and fat loss, and many women have problems with weight gain and that menopause because of the imbalance of hormones. So that's what 7-keto-DHEA is. And 5-HTP is a precursor that I use in women that are having mood issues, that are not sleeping. It forms serotonin, and we know there's a decrease in serotonin as estrogen goes down, and estrogen makes our serotonin work better. That's probably why we do see depressive symptoms in menopausal women. So 5-HTP is really good for sleep and mood, but you've got to check with your pharmacist before you take that because it can interact with other drugs, specifically antidepressants.
Oh, interesting. So if you check and you talk to your doctor about it, are these are over the counter, at least here in the States? So they're over the counter supplements?
Yes, they all are over the counter. But as I say, I find women, they try one thing, they try another. They don't really know why they're taking it. They don't know what symptoms they're good for, and they don't know how long to take them. So please consult with an expert and get a plan as to what you're doing. Don't suddenly take all of these supplements together.
Oh, that's a good. So if you take them like one at a time and see how each one works, for how long do you take them before you see if they actually work?
Within a month, I'm often seeing improvement in symptoms because they're natural. They're slower than drugs, okay? But I would definitely think you need to give them a trial of at least 3 months, but you should be seeing some improvements in symptoms within a month.
Okay, so let's talk about vaginal dryness.
Yes, let's.
So what do we do about that?
Firstly, we need to be talking to women about it because I told you about the study that showed that I think less than 25% of practitioners actually talk to women about sex life or vaginal dryness. And women are either too embarrassed to talk to their practitioner, either for the practitioner or for themselves. And so I talk to women about vaginal health all the time because as estrogen falls, so this is definitely normally in menopause, although some women on birth control pills and after pregnancy will notice vaginal dryness too as well because of the change in hormones. So first of all, you need a good lubricant and a good moisturizer. And I like to explain to women there's a different. Moisturizer is for vaginal health. It helps put your own moisture back because as estrogen falls, your moisture falls, the vagina becomes tight, it becomes thin, and it gets wrinkled. It gets wrinkled like the skin on your face. So we need a moisturizer for our face. We need a moisturizer for our vaginal tissue too as well. And the pH changes, and women often will get urinary tract infections and bacterial vaginosis too as well. So good moisturizer, and then lubricant is for sexual intercourse because it helps make things glide. And the other thing that we talked about is that you have to look at what's in those lubricants and moisturizers. You want things that are pH balanced. You want things that don't have additives in, that don't have parabens or phthalates or glycerin. Those are all harmful for the vaginal tissue. So make sure when you're looking, look at the ingredients and see what's good for them. So look at vaginal health. You can take a probiotic that's specifically for women's health in menopause. That's another thing that I recommend too as well. And women don't realize that their vaginas are acidic. And so that the things that they put in there need to be the right pH. So that's about vaginal health and vaginal dryness. And then we also can get a prescription from your doctor for vaginal estrogen, and that comes in different forms. It comes in forms of a vaginal insert or tablet, and it also comes in the form of a vaginal cream, either estradiol or estriol. And estriol is the one that I said has been shown to help with vaginal dryness, but also help with incontinence and urinary tract infections. And that's the one that you need to get by a compounding pharmacist. And there's a new one. Funny you mentioned DHEA. DHEA is now available as a vaginal cream, and it helps with vaginal dryness, and it also helps with libido too as well. So that's another one that's just new on the American market that you can ask your doctor for too.
So that's something you need to get from your physician. You need to get a prescription for that.
Yes, estrogen you need to get from your physician, and DHEA vaginal cream you need to get from your physician too as well.
Now, Irene, let me ask you about osteoporosis. What's the best thing that we can do to ward off our bones from getting thin and breaking?
Well, number one, taking enough vitamin D. Vitamin D, there's a huge deficiencies. It's one of my, probably top 5 vitamins and supplements that every woman needs to be taking. So, and most of us are deficient in vitamin D because we don't get sunshine, and if we're out in the summer, we're putting sunscreen on and we're not absorbing it. And if you're overweight, you absorb less vitamin D too as well. So that's one. Definitely exercise, okay? So weight-bearing exercise. So just walking, yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, all of those types of things. And you need to be aware, what's your risk? If your mother had osteoporosis or had a hip fracture, then that increases your risk. So see if you're at risk, and if you need to have a bone density done to get your baseline bone density, and then go from there, because those first 5 years after menopause, when estrogen declines, because estrogen is bone protective and bone building, that's when your bone density is going to fall. So if you go on hormone replacement therapy, it used to be the first-line treatment. Now it's second-line treatment, but it is first-line prevention. That will prevent osteoporosis. We know that.
Irene, this was all good stuff, and your book is just chock full of all of the information that you just talked about and so much more. And you have a special for my listeners. Can you tell them what it is?
Yes, they can get a download of my book. I think you've got the link up on your website.
I do.
And that's free. And then there is an offer for the Kindle version, which is just $2.99 American dollars.
That is so well worth it. And yes, my listeners can go to victoriouswoman.com and they can click on that link for the download. Irene, thank you so much for coming to Happy Hour today.
This has been great. Now I'm going to have my glass of wine.
There you go. You're going to have a real happy hour, huh? Have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks, Annmarie.
Thank you. And listen, before we go, Victory Chicks and you guys, I have a couple things for you. First, I'm really excited about my new book, The 5-Year Marriage. It's on Kindle. It took a while to get up on Kindle, but you can download it to your tablet now for only $4.99. And I want to tell you, that's a bargain, because I was talking to one of my girlfriends last night, and her son got married in sort of a quickie wedding in Las Vegas, and she was asking him, did you talk about this? Did you talk about that? And all of those things are things that are in the 5-Year Marriage, in chapters on the 5-Year Marriage Partner, and two chapters called the 5-Year Marriage Basics. And though you'll want to load the Kindle for yourself, you'll want to get an autographed copy for one of your kids. So I'll soon be doing a local book signing. And speaking of book signings, our friend and elder care attorney, Kathy Sikorsky, is doing a signing at Main Point Books in Wayne on Sunday at 11 o'clock. And I'll be there, so come out to meet me and Kathy Sikorsky. And one more thing. Do you remember Shaman Anumani, who was here a couple of weeks ago? Well, on Monday at 6 o'clock, this coming Monday, I'm going to be with her, and she does a Facebook Live called Unmasking Your Soul. So if you're on Facebook, tune in. I posted a link to it on today's radio wrap-up at victoriouswoman.com. So listen, that's our show for today. Thanks for joining me at Friday Happy Hour. I'm taking next Friday off for Easter. To my Jewish listeners, I wish you a happy Passover. And to all of those of you who celebrate Easter, happy Easter, and may the risen Christ bless you, and may the Easter Bunny leave you exquisite chocolate. And I'm going to wrap up with this menopause quote from the American writer Sandra Singh Lowe, who said, "In the end, the real wisdom of menopause may be in questioning how fun or even sane this chore wheel called modern life actually is." Well, Victory Chicks and you guys, if you've been questioning, maybe it's time for a new direction, one that gives you some better jazz in your life. So I hope you find that over this next week. And I'll be back on April 6th with the fabulous author and hometown girl Lisa Scottolini, and I'll talk with you then. Have a fabulous weekend. Jen's on.
Thanks for listening to this Friday Happy Hour. Make sure you subscribe, rate and review today's show. And join us again next week for the Friday Happy Hour with Annmarie Kelly.